It's time to get back to the subject of Lent and the perusing of our life in this time of contemplation. In this year of COVID, which will be marked on the 11th of March, 1 year after the World Health Organization declared the pandemic, and our bishops have asked that the day be observed with fasting and prayer, observing 3 minutes of silence at 11:35 a.m., and to call to mind the loss, the pain, the grief, the resilience, the compassion, and the extraordinary sacrifices that have been made, the hallmarks of the past year. For the day's motif, they have chosen the Gospel of John recording Jesus at the grave of his friend Lazarus. Jesus wept. This year has been a year of tears for many. And so we look not only to our past this Lent, but also to the inevitable day when we leave this world for the next and stand accountable before God for the life we have lived. Reading the quotes of an old favorite of mine, I came across the answer that I would like to be able to give when I approached the pearly gates. It was Irma Bombeck, the late, great humorist philosopher, who best described that moment when she wrote, "When I stand before God at the end of my life, I would hope that I would not have a single bit of talent left and could say, 'I have used everything you gave me.'" While I'm sure we would all like to be able to offer up that sentiment, I wonder how many of us could echo those words with a straight face. Could we even say we tried? We probably can agree that it is a great goal, but how many of us could hope to be able to credit ourselves with having done just that? Much as I would like to, I know that I've wasted many talents through inattention, impatience, unwillingness to ask for help, or to admit my own ignorance of how things are done. So I won't be able to lay claim to having used up everything God gave me. Mind you, I will be able to note that I did try to make use of talents that God neglected to give me. Singing is at the top of that list. Hymns, folk music, rock and roll. I've tried them all, much to the chagrin of anyone within ear range. Then contemplation without squirming would be heavenly, and hoping one day to appreciate the symphony and ballet so that I could understand why my husband enjoyed them so. So, better to concentrate on the gifts given rather than the gifts desired. I can also look at talents that I have used, and I'm glad that I've taken advantage of many of his gifts to me. Delight in taking on challenges, joy in new tasks, and ability to work long hours, problem-solving skills, imagination, and endless curiosity about just about everything. So, why do we not use all those gifts we're given? Why do we all too often look back with the regrets of coulda, woulda, shoulda dones? My experience is that too often we dissuade ourselves from being what we could be and doing what we could do. It's a peculiar form of false modesty. We look at a challenge and declare that we aren't supple enough to do yoga. We aren't smart enough to get into that program. That we lack the discipline to write a book. Well, the list never ends. And the statements may be true right now. But what do we do to change it so that we can succeed? You don't have to start with yoga. Some pre-workout stretches will do. Is it that you aren't smart enough, or that you haven't taken any of the prerequisite courses? And try sitting down at the computer and start writing. Don't say you can't do something that you haven't even tried. We defeat ourselves far more frequently through our own lack of confidence. We really do not have the right to ignore the talents and gifts that we have. The world needs all that humanity has to offer. Sitting in front of the TV watching a game lamenting that I could have been drafted by the Raptors will definitely not change that outcome. But joining a local team can still enrich your life. Or coaching the junior league can still take advantage of the God-given skills you didn't take advantage of in the past. And you will benefit others for the future. Discipline is such a hard taskmaster. And as we look back at opportunities we ignored or challenges we failed, we often see missed practices and workouts and partying rather than sleeping as cause and effect, if we're honest with ourselves. And the fear of failure is often the fear of humiliation. Every great artist had to get up on the stage or hang up their painting or hit the marathon trail and run the risk of being booed, or even worse, being laughed at. Unless one was trying out at Second City. I wonder how many great works of art, great performances, and broken world records do not exist because of that insecurity. If you don't try, no one will see your failure. But if you don't try, if you don't risk ridicule, or even worse, sympathy, you're guaranteed to fail, for that is the only outcome for the coward in all of us. And COVID has proven the greatest aid and abetter to that fear that avoids trying. After all, you can't go out. The art galleries are closed, and the open mic nights are canceled. You can't sing at church or anywhere else, and there are no auditions for the local Red Barn Theatre. But there is no limit on dreams, and no reason you can't do the hard work that goes before fulfilling most of them. There's nothing about COVID that says you can't sing in the shower, or draw on the back of envelopes, or do push-ups in the living room, and then move on from there. One nice thing about practicing at home these days is that it usually is far less expensive. You don't have to buy coffees, or rent ice time, or pay the gym fees. No one is going to be around to be impressed by expensive new runners or fancy new spandex, so you might as well keep on wearing the old and the comfortable. You're already paying for the electricity and internet, so the next cost comes when you come to the end and get to print out your very own next great Canadian novel. Online courses, Wikipedia, experts offering their time and advice for free, chats with others sharing your dream. It is all there for the asking. You just need to log in and zoom in. When I look back, I see so many times when I would have benefited from just asking. I thought articling was just like any other course you had to get through, not aware what a spot with the right firm meant for how far your career was likely to go, what specialties you could embrace, and whether your talents would be maximized. In my innocence, I thought that the riding you ran in didn't matter, that if you worked hard enough and knocked on enough doors, you could win the election, an assumption that would have been laughable if I had only asked before saying yes. Like many who aspire to write, I have a dread of blank white pages. But on asking, my husband had a solution for that. He would write 2 or 3 sentences, and then the paper was no longer blank, and I would happily carry on. His sentences never incorporated, but they saved the day. It's easier to do something when someone is holding your hand, something else you often have to ask for, but it works. I never would have gone to university if Harold hadn't gone with me that first day and kept me from running away, convinced that as a high school dropout I could never make it. He stayed, and so did I. When I went to seminary, the only ministers I knew served in a church, preached on Sundays, did weddings on Saturday, and funerals as needed. The only chaplain I ever heard of was Father Mulcahy from MASH. Clearly of no interest to me, since I avoid doctors and hospitals like the plague and had no intention of joining the military. And yet the best job I ever had was as a hospital chaplain, and it was a doctor who became a very dear friend, who cheered me on and opened doors for me and turned my job into the delight that had me tearing out of bed to get there an hour before my workday started. When you look back over your shoulder, it's amazing how many people are there cheering you on, opening doors, picking you up and dusting you off, and setting you back on the path. Teachers, friends, co-workers, bosses, relatives, neighbors, and strangers. And then look over your other shoulder and see how many you have helped along the way. Hopefully, the lines are closing in on equal. To have talents and not to use them is comparable to not reaching out your hand to saving the drowning child, or walking past the woman being assaulted, or refusing to turn the lights on when another is stumbling in the dark. Our talents and gifts are ours to use, or abuse, or ignore. That's what free will is all about. And God gave us free will. But using free will To not use our gifts is not a justification. It does not make it right. Our gifts are given to be used for our own benefit, but to benefit others as well. So it's incredibly selfish, in addition to cowardly, to ignore what you could be and could do. As you travel the Lenten path of self-discovery, take time to consider your unused or underused gifts, your wasted opportunities, your future potential, and then make plans to strengthen your backbone to try what feels awkward or difficult or embarrassing or futile. Plans to try something you have never tried before. Plans to do something different and difficult and daring. The first step is always the most difficult. So practice it while you're staying in and staying safe, and then put on the armor of faith and do it, whatever your it may be. We'll be cheering you on, because it's with daring that the greatest discoveries are made, particularly the discoveries we make about ourselves. Remember, it's like the old Nat King Cole song goes, "Nothing's impossible, I have found, for when my chin is on the ground, I pick myself up, dust myself off, and start all over again." Lent gives us this time to review and renew and pick ourselves up and start all over again. Hopefully, we will start with the curiosity to discover how much more we could be than we have allowed ourselves to be. And then we'll work at being the person we really dream of being. May your voyage of discovery bring great rewards. So may it be. Amen. You know, the wonderful thing about reaching the blessed month of March is that I feel I've survived another winter, no matter how much cold and snow are yet to come. As well as planning how to better live our lives during Lent, we get to plan the garden that we'll plant. In many ways, it's the same thing. March is also the month of 4 birthdays in my family. Mine, 2 children, and a granddaughter. And today is Darby's, the one who pulls this whole thoughts from my computer to being online. So, happy birthday, Darby! Don't forget to worship online, and hopefully we will soon return to the blessings of worshiping together.